gonna hit start record and I'm gonna turn on this music. No, we're gonna do this one. Okay. So this is a message to my husband. Happy birthday. I know you have been disappointed that I haven't been able to read your writings. And you know the reason why. But I know like disappointment is still there. So my gift to you this year is I'm going to read it on recording so I can give you my opinion as I'm reading it, or attempting to read it. Because I know you miss the discussions, but sometimes I just don't have the brain power anymore. So I'm actually not sure which one is the one that you're, you know, I guess I can see which one you updated last. It would be this one, the Mass Effect Biodivergence, the Psychotic Biotic, the Cerberus Cheerleader. They started at extreme ends of the spectrum and at each other's throats, but that's not how they ended up. This fic explores how Jack and Miranda changed during the events of Mass Effect 2 and the romance along the way. Okay. Updated on Sundays. Oh, this is why you're busy. Okay. And if anyone wants to read this, this is on AO3. My husband's user is ReclusiveWriter. The other one here, Betrayal, Vermeer. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. It leaves Shepard having to choose between the mission, duty, friendship, and love. Whichever he chooses, regret is sure to follow. And then Mass Effect Reconstruction, that's the one that we started. I started helping with. Well, not helping, but like we were talking about it before I started the new medication. So let's see. The Crucible destroyed the Reapers. The Crucible destroyed the Reapers, but the battle is not over. Hello. Hi. You want to come and be on the video? There are kittens. But the battle is not over. With all technology damaged and the governments on Earth in chaos after the Reaper War, warlords, gangs, and strongmen seek to establish their own control of the planet. Above its blue skies, a severely damaged citadel floats helplessly, its citizens under dual threat from Cerberus, remnants, and starvation. Only one person can restore order and peace to the Sol system, but Shepard is dead, right? This is post Mass Effect 3 fic exploring the aftermath of the destroyed ending. Slow burn, but plenty of familiar faces. So that one was last updated in 2021. I don't know if he finished or not. The Betrayal one, I think that one's finished. The check mark, I think, means finished. That one's 2023. And then this one is ongoing. So we're going to do the ongoing one. Okay. Mass Effect, Biodivergence. Oh, Biotic Divergence. ReclusiveWriter. Okay, the notes. I thought I might have been done with Mass Effect fics, but my annual playthrough got all the old ideas bouncing around my head again. Jack and Miranda are, for me, the most interesting two squad mates in Mass Effect 2, not just because of their rivalry, but because of how much they evolve during the game and into Mass Effect 3. Most of the other characters have some growth in Mass Effect 2, but Jack and Miranda's evolution as people during the game is so stark and interesting that I finally decided to write about it. FYI, I also have ideas on how to continue my Mass Effect Resurrection fic, but this is one in my head. But this is the one in my head at the moment. Chapter 1. Two sides. Tied down, paralyzed, frozen, eyes, scores of them looking down on her, watching, analyzing, plotting. Hands, too many of them, touching, holding, twisting, restricting, burning in her arms, legs, pain throughout, racking her body. The walls around her closing in, the eyes and hands numerous, menacing, unrelenting. The power she should have had was not responding, energy building to a crescendo, but not releasing. Heart racing, pounding, threatening to burst from her chest, yet she could do nothing. Nothing except scream. And so Jack did. Other sensations soon followed. Her heart was still pounding, so much so she could feel it between her eyes. It pulsed alongside a horrid pain, coursing through her head, which felt as if it might explode. Fucking cryo, she moaned as her hands held her head, her eyes falling shut. Pushed it too much, too quickly. Not that she had a choice. Just yesterday, Jack had been practically dead to the world, locked on the prison ship Purgatory, which had been floating around Ocean's system. Which had been floating about Ocean system in the Hourglass Nebula, a hellhole filled with murderers, rapists, and worse. Jack counted herself among the most dangerous. So dangerous, in fact, that she had been put into a cryogenic stasis to protect the other prisoners and the guards themselves. But someone had busted her out and taken down the station entirely. Well, they flipped the switch to release her from cryo, but she had done the busting. Confronted by armed guards, heavy mechs, and other prisoners, some of whom had gotten weapons, she unleashed biotic hell on anyone who got in her way, throwing a literal shockwave of destruction to clear a path. Jack was used to exerting her biotics. Her going at half strength was more than any human she'd met could do in a full tilt. Let's read that again. Jack was used to exerting her biotics. Her going at half strength was more than any human she met could do at full tilt. But even she had limits, and severe overexertion caused what amounted to a severe migraine, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, light sensitivity, and of course, pressure that made her head and neck feel like they were trapped in a vice. Going all out when freshly out of cryo was never going to end well. Her body just wasn't ready. She literally wasn't warmed up. But given her situation, if her brain exploded, so be it. That would be better than the alternative. Her still trembling hand ran Her still trembling hand ran over her shaved head, while her breathing slowly was returning to normal. She wasn't there anymore. Not in purgatory. Not in a Cerberus facility. She was free. right? Jack slowly recalled everything else. She wasn't in a Cerberus facility, but she was on a Cerberus ship. At any moment, she might end up knocked out, restrained, and handed back to them. What the hell am I doing here? Of course, like her breakout from purgatory, she didn't have a choice. This Cerberus Commander Shepard had made that clear. Go down with the prison ship, or take my chances with him. Not that she liked her chances. True, Shepard had been the one who triggered the breakout, and he had given her access to Cerberus files, which he could have denied her once she was on the ship. It was a mountain of information, a wealth of knowledge to someone who had the time to shift through it. Jack knew time was one thing she didn't have. Cerberus had been hunting her for years. In fact, she had assumed Purgatory's Warden Curl would sell her at the first opportunity. That had never happened. Apparently, the threat of releasing someone who had once crashed a space station into a moon was a pretty nice way to extort exorbitant fees from planetary governments. Why were they willing to part with her now? Jack assumed Cerberus had finally coughed up so many credits, even Curl couldn't pass it up. Then when the deal went wrong, Curl tried to recapture her and failed. Apparently, Shepard had taken care of him. If he doesn't turn me over to Cerberus, he might be all right. If was a rather important qualification. She fully expected the betrayal at some point. That had made it hard to fall asleep. Instead, Jack had started shifting through the files, which was where she saw Cerberus had tried to purchase her multiple times. However, her headache had started to build and the words just all started to blend together. As the pain grew worse, she could do nothing but lay down and close her eyes, hoping the extreme pressure would dissipate. Eventually, she fell asleep and was taken back there. Jack didn't even know where there was. Purgatory was easy enough, but the facility where she had been held and tortured by Cerberus? She had no idea where that was. The only thing Jack knew for certain was that she was not back there now. That was a positive, especially since she couldn't be sure what would happen when she did fall asleep, beyond slipping into her frequent nightmares. She also wasn't restrained, a good sign. It would have been simple enough to drug her, neutralize her, and prepare her for transport. Well, not simple, but doable. The Cerberus cheerleader, Shepard had called her Miranda, probably would have. Shepard didn't, which probably meant he had other things in mind for her. To be honest, Jack didn't really hear what it was about. Some big, bad suicide mission. They were unlikely to return alive. That also meant Jack was unlikely to stay. But the ship seemed to still be in transit. She could try to steal a shuttle, but they were probably watching her. Check that. There's no probably about it. They definitely are. The shuttles were also probably guarded. With her headache, there was no chance she'd be able to manage taking out the guards now. And flying with yet eyes closed, even Jack wasn't that crazy. Probably should figure out what the hell is going on. But as Jack went to stand up, she nearly stumbled and fell back on her small ass. Her head still pounded, and the dim light seemed as bright as the sun on a clear day. There was no way she could walk reliably, let alone do much else. Even the data pads were too bright for her now. Jack laid back down and shut her eyes. A soft bluish hue of biotic energy surrounded her, signaling her frustration with being unable to escape. The throbbing sensations of pain in her head, feeling like a vice was being tightened around it, were her most pressing concern. However, when she opened her eyes next, if she opened them, she had no idea if she would still be on the ship or in a transport to the Cerberus facility. But she couldn't do anything about that now. All she could do was rest and wait for the pain to finally stop. Then she'd figure out what to do next, wherever I am. She's a damn menace, Shepard. Miranda Lawson was not one to mince words. Sure, she could be diplomatic, but most times being direct and to the point was far more efficient. And if there was one thing Miranda appreciated, it was efficiency. That was closely followed by a desire for order. Make a plan, figure out what's needed to implement it, and then do it. Freelancing, shooting from the hip, that led to disaster. That's why so many Cerberus operatives failed, but she never did. Apparently, Commander Shepard didn't follow the same rules. All the more reason that a control chip should have been implanted during Project Lazarus, she thought. The elusive man apparently thinks she's an asset to the team, Shepard said, his arms crossed. It's my job to figure out how to get the best out of her. It's my job to figure out how to get the best out of her. Miranda could only shake her head as the pair stood in her executive office quarters on deck 3. Shepard had finally come to see her after disregarding her wishes and giving Subject 0 full access to Cerberus files. He hadn't come right away. Perhaps he figured time would cool Miranda's temper. Another miscalculation. She's a reckless, impulsive terrorist, Miranda argued. There's no reason to trust her with that information, especially since she had no other options. She could leave, Shepard said, or not give it her all. Given what we face, that'd probably be even worse. If she's not pulling her all, Miranda began, then we can restrain her and send her back to Cerberus. If she's not a fool, and that's a big if, she already knows she doesn't have any other choice but to help us. Holding someone at gunpoint isn't a great way to bring out the best in them, Shepard said. But it can be a strong motivator, Miranda replied. Noted, Shepard said. But that's not how I run my ship or my crew. And Miranda, the elusive man, blocks us from seeing what he doesn't want us to see. There's no way Jack is going to find anything that's going to cause us problems. You don't think I know that, Shepard? Miranda demanded. It's the principle. We shouldn't be catering to the whims of unstable and psychotic individuals. That's not something you have to worry about, Shepard said. I take responsibility. Until I have to clean up the aftermath, Miranda replied. I'll send Mess Sergeant Gardner to let him know he might be needed, Shepard replied. Joke, Shepard? Miranda said. This is serious. I'm aware, Shepard said. But if you don't find some humor out of this whole situation, you're going to go insane long before we hit the Omega-4 relay. Miranda could only shake her head. Understood, Commander. We'll talk later, Miranda, Shepard said. Miranda could only nod. It was a sign of respect, not of agreement. And once the door closed behind Shepard, she returned to her desk, plopped herself down in her chair, and sank her face into her hands. What the hell are we doing? Miranda had nothing but respect for the idea of Shepard. He had done more than any other human to further their reputation in the galaxy, and taking down a Reaper, all while getting stonewalled by the Council, she couldn't help but be impressed. However, there were other things to consider. Shepard had gone after and taken out multiple Cerberus bases, all but eliminating one cell. Then there was a coup, when Cerberus had lured Shepard and his squad of 50 Marines into a nest of thresher moths. That had been early in the commander's career, but Miranda was concerned it could still be a factor in Shepard's decision-making. After all, he had forced a former Alliance scientist who had worked on a coup to testify about Cerberus a few years back. Yes, Shepard wanted to fight the Reapers, but he also didn't trust Cerberus, even after they had brought him back from the dead. He had made that quite clear a few times so far, and Miranda couldn't help but wonder if part of his reason for letting Subject Zero have the files was to undermine the organization. Unfortunately, Miranda was limited in her options. Her orders from Cerberus leaders, the shadowy elusive man, were clear. Shepard was in command. She could question his orders, but not countermand or undermine them. The only thing she could do was report back to the elusive man on anything she found suspicious and see if he would override the commander. Accessing the cameras via her computer, Miranda watched as Shepard made his way to the elevator. It went down to the engineering deck. Was he going to see Subject Zero? He isn't infatuated with her, is he? Miranda wouldn't have thought that possible, but Shepard was a man, and most men couldn't resist a half-naked woman before them, even if she was a psychotic murderer with far too many tattoos and a horrific haircut. If Shepard wanted to talk, however, he was out of luck. Subject Zero was laying on the bench in the bowels of engineering level with her eyes closed. She looked to be sleeping, as opposed to earlier, when she was going through files of various data paths. "You'll never find what you're looking for," Miranda mused. Not that she had any idea what Zero was looking for. Shepard didn't go to see her, however. Instead, he turned right when he got off the elevator and went to the starboard cargo, where he spoke to the mercenary Zaid Massini. Massini liked to wax poetic, so Shepard should probably be there for at least a few minutes, and he'd probably check in with the engineers, Donnelly and Daniels, too. Now was her chance. Miranda made a beeline from her office to the elevator to quickly make her way over to the deck 2 before Shepard returned to that level. Tapping her foot in impatience, Miranda waited what seemed like an agonizing length of time for the elevator to reach her. That same feeling returned as she stood in the elevator, waiting for it to reach her destination. But it did arrive, and Miranda made a quick jog through the armory to the communications room. There she activated her end of the quantum entangler, which would allow her to communicate with the elusive man as close to in person as she could get these days. Stepping in the circle and watching as the grid surrounded her, Miranda saw her environment change from the metal walls of the Normandy to the open surroundings of Kronos Station, and the immaculately groomed elusive man seated before her. His gaze fell upon her, his blue eyes providing contrast to the darkness that surrounded them. "Miranda," he said, taking a drag on his cigarette. "What do you have for me?" "I'm concerned about Shepard," Miranda said. "He doesn't seem intent on following protocol, no matter what anyone here tells him." "To be expected," said the elusive man replied. "Shepard has never operated conventionally." But he's going beyond even what we expected, Miranda said. He offered to give Subject Zero full access to her files. At first I thought it was a bluff, but no, he ordered me to give her the access. I'm aware, the elusive man said, as he put out his cigarette. There's nothing in those files that we have to worry about. Subject Zero can be placated for now. I have larger concerns about Shepard, Miranda continued. His prior experiences make him a question mark. He doesn't trust us, and I don't think he'll operate with our goals in mind. He wouldn't be who we need if he was a robot following orders, the elusive man said. Instead, we need to remind him that it's Cerberus on his side, not the Alliance or the Council. But we won't be able to do that if we put up resistance to everything he does, no matter how small it might be. Miranda crossed her arms. So I'm supposed to ignore when he undermines us? You'll do exactly what you've done here, the elusive man replied. And if we believe it requires intervention, then we'll take appropriate steps. And when Shepard doesn't listen, Miranda demanded. It will be handled, the elusive man told her. Is there anything else, Miranda? Miranda shook her head. Not at this time. I look forward to your next briefing, the elusive man said. I'm curious to see how Subject Zero performs. He turned off the entangler and Miranda watched the area around her return to that communications room. All she could do was shake her head. Miranda didn't want to doubt the elusive man. He was perhaps the most impressive and accomplished man she knew, having done more for the advancement of humanity than anyone in recent memory. Even Shepard. All she could do was shake her head. Miranda didn't want to doubt the elusive man. He was perhaps the most impressive and accomplished man she knew, having done more for the advancement of humanity than any one in recent memory, even Shepard. Brilliant and blessed with vision, she trusted his judgment for the most part. But she couldn't help but wonder if perhaps the elusive man underestimated the commander. It was hard to get a sense of Shepard's charisma from just vids and a few chats. Yet it was undeniable, and she could already see his pull on Jacob Taylor, her chief security officer. Even with security and listening devices on the ship, Miranda was not entirely certain even the elusive man could stop Shepard if he decided to go rogue. Let's change the music. Yes, you are now a Spectre. Very fancy. Spectre. But she couldn't help but wonder if perhaps the elusive man underestimated the commander. It was hard to get a sense of Shepard's charisma just from vids and a few chats. Yet it was undeniable, and she could already see his pull on Jacob Taylor, her chief security officer. Even with security and listening devices on the ship, Miranda was not entirely certain even the elusive man could stop Shepard if he decided to go rogue. Unable to do anything else, Miranda made a quick exit, just in case Shepard made a surprise appearance. Her route took her to the armory, where Jacob was working. There was no intention to start a conversation, but Jacob had other ideas. This is too uplifting. Waiting to see what music it is. I'm getting tired. Talking with the boss man? Jacob asked. Miranda stopped mid-step. It was tempting to ignore him and just keep walking. If he questioned it later, she could just say she had something on her mind. Most people believed Miranda was always focused on her work anyway. But Jacob was a friend, or at least something beyond an acquaintance. Miranda didn't have many of either. People were nosy. They asked too many questions, which Miranda had no interest in answering, and those were the good ones. The bad ones were sexist and or chauvinistic, intimidated by her looks, intelligence, attitude, or all three. Jacob had his issues, but they were mild in comparison. Most stemmed from a lack of trust. He was never fully on board with Cerberus. Actions spoke louder than words with him. That was why he worked well with Miranda. He appreciated her capabilities and her straightforward nature. And she appreciated that he just did his job and didn't poke around too much. Quiet competence is an underrated quality. Miranda tried to reward that with loyalty to him. She even briefly considered something more, but it proved too complicated. Romantic relationships were unpredictable, and Miranda had no time for such things, especially when it could impact her work or his. Still, she didn't want to admit to complaining to the elusive man, given Jacob might just like Shepard more than her boss. Miranda decided to play it cautiously. Just giving a status report, Miranda said. I figured he would be interested to see how Subject Zero is acclimating. Jacob crossed his arms and grinned. She hasn't blasted a hole through the cargo hold. Yet. That's a plus. We'll see how long that lasts, Miranda said. Her biotics are certainly powerful, but she's clearly unstable. I'm worried she could be more of a hindrance than an asset. I hear that, Jacob said. Still, we're going to need all the firepower we can get if we want to take down the collectors. I trust Shepard to keep her pointed in their direction rather than ours. I wouldn't be so sure, Miranda said. She hates Cerberus, and I doubt she takes orders well. None of the people we're picking up are going to take orders from us, Miranda. Shepard's the one who has to get them to fall in line. And who keeps him in line? Miranda asked. That was instinct, and she regretted it immediately. Isn't the whole point to let him do his thing? Jacob asked. We have to trust the commander can get the job done. If not, he didn't need to finish. Miranda got the point. Then let's hope he's up to the task. In any case, I have to get back to work. Of course, Miranda, Jacob said. She nodded and started her way out. Miranda, Jacob called to her. She turned back, brow arched. He had something else? I know you don't fully trust the commander, he began, but if anyone can do this, it's Shepard. I have no doubts about his ability, Jacob, Miranda said, and let's leave it at that. Jacob nodded. As usual, he knew not to press further. For a moment, it was Miranda who wanted to pry, to see why Jacob had such faith. But she resisted and made a quick exit from the armory. Headed back to the elevator. Are you all right, Operative Lawson? It was the inquisitive voice of Yeoman Kelly Chambers, who was at her post by the galaxy map, which stood a few feet away from the elevator. Shepard's administrative assistant and the ship's psychologist, it was her responsibility to check on everyone, just doing her job. This time, however, Miranda just kept on walking, hitting the button in the elevator, refusing to even acknowledge her nosy subordinate. When the doors opened, she stepped on, hit the button for deck 3, and then looked upward until the elevator doors had closed. Not today, Chambers. Not today. Okay, so that is the end. I'm not going to leave kudos, although if anyone is watching this and they want to leave kudos, go ahead. He gets informed about the kudos, so I want this to be a surprise. Let me see how many chapters he has, though. Almost 50. Yeah, that seems like my husband. Okay, so we are going to we're gonna stop here today. Let me switch back to this music here real quick. Okay, so that was chapter 1 of Biotic Divergence by ReclusiveWriter. It's interesting, the exploration of, hello, would you like to come up? Okay. Don't purr too loud. You want down? Okay. I do find it interesting that the exploration of Jack's and Miranda's paranoia. Basically, it's a duality of their paranoia in the beginning and lack of trust. So I look forward to seeing how that continues. Because they're both suspicious, they're both paranoid, they both don't trust, especially Shepard, with good reason. They're unsure, but I look forward to see how they handle it. So that's going to be it for today because now I am extremely tired. I used most of my brain power here to get through. But yeah, it was interesting. So I look forward to seeing how this develops. All right. I love you, hun. Bye. Gigi. Gigi's tail. Okay. And we're going to stop.